We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it! My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
It's time to buckle up for making sense of the madness.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here, and we're going to be talking about the Demiurge, Neuroweapons, the Bio-nano era that we are currently in, and now really have been in for some time. And I mean that in the sense not that we haven't really gone into bio-nanotechnology for decade upon decade upon decade, sometimes even preceding World War II, accelerating, in my opinion, after World War II, because we have to really look at not only biological warfare, but its disbursement both overtly and covertly in those regions, and then the technology of modifying biological species, whether or not that's you or me, or just the corn that be going in your belly. It's been a very long time. But when I talk about the bio-nano era in particular now, I am referencing the fact that on a large scale, the human populace has now adopted this technology. And I'm just going to leave it there because we are streaming right now on the mainstream platforms. Now, that being said, there has been this movement to try to normalize this technology more and more as we move into a transhumanist future. And when I cover these issues, I often cover the fact that so many of these people go into the historical nature of esoteric knowledge, of things like alchemy, which we discussed with CERN. And in particular, this video is going to touch on a man named James Giordano. Now, I was thinking to myself, have I ever done a full video on Giordano? And I don't believe I have. I think that a few times I've played some of his clips. So we're going to get people familiar with him with one of his more infamous clips talking about neuroweapons. Now, Giordano's a really interesting guy. All right, a lot of people see a 1 or 2 minute clip of someone, they have a reaction, and they immediately break out their jump to conclusions, Matt. Now, at the same time, the gravity of the technology that this man discusses and the manner in which he believes it to be mobilized, it's a big issue. I'm not trying to dissipate that whatsoever. But I also like to get a larger perspective from individuals. So after we play this clip of him talking about quote-unquote neuroweapons, very intelligent guy, okay, we're also going to play this speech. And I think the neuroweapons is rather recent. It's within the last 5 years or so that he had this discussion, maybe 6. It could be back to 2019. The speech we're going to watch is like 2014, maybe 2013. And it's more than just a speech. It's like this PowerPoint presentation that really goes into the quote unquote roots of humanity. And there are many points in this conversation where he is articulating things it's hard for me to disagree with. Very smart guy. So with that being said, after we watch both of these videos, I want to get your take on James Giordano himself, his lectures, I would say where you believe the transhumanist movement is now, where it is going, where bio-nano warfare is now, where it is going, and your overall thoughts on these speeches and presentations. That being said, I need your support. Thumbs it up right now. Subscribe, share, check out all the alt platforms. Follow me on X at Jason Bermas, and if you can, $5, $10, $15 big donors. Need you now more than ever. Again, there are no paychecks. There is no monetization on YouTube. You are my support base. So please consider donating as well. This is Giordano. Before we get into the video, he serves at the Institute for National Strategic Studies at the National Defense University currently. As you can see, his areas of expertise are emerging science and technology, neurocognitive technology, bioweapons, biowarfare, and biosecurity ethics. Let's do it. Let's start again with the more infamous clip on neuroweapons.
To be back. Thank you very much.
So just to kick us off and to kind of level set before we dive in deeper, can you define what you mean by the word neuroweapons?
You know, the idea of using any instrument or method as means of contending against others is a very formal definition of a weapon. It need not be something that is malevolent per se, but again, by operational definition, what a weapon does is in some way alters that individual's thoughts, emotions, behaviors, physical nature, health, in such a way that is going to be more amenable to the individual who is yielding the weapon. So in other words, I'm changing an individual's stance towards me in some way and making them engage in a stance that's more aligned with what I want them to be. That's a formal definition of a weapon.
Now, I want to just stop it right there. Just in the beginnings of that, what's that sound like to you? It sounds like information warfare, what a lot of people are talking about, fifth generation warfare. But once again, I like to point out that InfoWar, PsyWar, it's been around a long, long time. Now we're trying to directly utilize bio-nano technologies, all right, in that influence campaign. And I know there are varying degrees of beliefs of how, for instance, electromagnetic waves. We've now had these weapons with the quote-unquote Havana syndrome out there that have been discussed. You know, how much of that is reality? How much further can you take it? There are those that claim to be targeted individuals. That's one of those things that I really don't get into because there is no way for me to verify one way or the other if indeed that person is targeted, right? Not trying to lessen them or demean them or make fun of them. I mean, if they believe something's going on, whether or not it's that, you know, I'm very sympathetic to that idea.
Comes right out of the Oxford English Dictionary. Clearly, when we think of weapons, we think of things like bombs, tanks, planes, boats, soldiers. And that's not incorrect. I mean, I think the more colloquial use of a weapon represents some instrument that's going to induce some kind of morbidity or mortality. And when utilized in these bellicose constructs, that's certainly one of the ideas of weaponology. But weaponology, as we discussed last time, can also include things that I do to my own forces, whether it's the human resources or whether the actual forces themselves, to make them more efficient in their mission of national security, intelligence, and defense, not only in terms of what I do to others. In that sense, if we put the neuro prefix direct weapon. What we're really looking at is harnessing the neurological system, both peripherally and centrally, and its functions of thought, emotions, and behavior, so as to then yield instruments, methods, techniques, tactics, and tools that can then be leveraged against others, so as for us to then gain some purchase over their thoughts, emotions, and conduct. So a neuroweapon is essentially any weaponized method or tool that acts through the nervous system or at the nervous system, upon the nervous system, to influence and change the attitudes, feelings, thoughts, behaviors of others.
So, again, the question is, since we know that they've utilized what many refer to as propaganda, we know right now we are in the middle of quote-unquote social media campaigns, bot campaigns that are meant to be disguised as Russia. There's always plausible deniability. There's always misinformation and disinformation. But now you're seeing more and more people accept the idea of, say, hardwiring their brain with a quote-unquote Musk-approved Neuralink. And I also want to say this when we talk about that technology, because I think this is really important, that you also have BlackRock Neurotech. So those type of hard devices, okay, that's one way. That's invasive. Now, they would contend that if you aerosolize certain technologies, this would be more of a non-invasive method. But of course, that would become invasive into your nervous system. So let's continue with Giordano. And, essentially the weapons of warfare utilized to disrupt your process of cognitive thought. All right. Now, again, I think that conversations need to be had. I want people to have discernment. I think that the way to combat wrongful information, purposeful disinformation, is the freedom to speak the truth and then get into an arena where both sides can present their evidence. On one end, I feel like this guy's going beyond that in just the information war spectrum. But of course, when we're talking about the bio-nano technology, it's a whole nother ballgame.
Thanks for that overview. So when we talk about neuroweapons, what types of technologies fall under that umbrella?
Well, I think what is important to understand is that the basic technologies of the brain sciences can be parsed into two general categories, very generally. Those technologies that are used for assessing the brain and those technologies that are used for accessing and affecting the brain. And underneath those two general ideas, we can assess what's going on in individuals and groups of individuals' brains so as to be able to gain some notion of what nodes and networks are involved in different processes of cognition, emotion, and various actions, and what their dispositions might be. And we can use those both as information and as possible reconnaissance targets, if you will, to then affect those substrates, those processes and mechanisms, either indirectly through the use of narratives, memes, symbols, iconographies, psychological operations, human terrain teaming engagements, or more directly. Now, when we're talking about things that are direct, now we're talking about interventional things. And given the fact that the neurosciences are indeed a biomedical life science that also conjoins the physical sciences, now what we're talking about is those things that tend to fall under the rubric of biological toxins and chemical weapons, broadly construed as drugs.
Broadly construed as drugs. We got to stop it right there for a second. All right. So again, guy's extremely intelligent, extremely articulate, puts it right out there in the spectrum of, he talks about the whisper campaigns, everything I just said before, he confirms. Now, again, I've seen these videos before, and, I was kind of summarizing anyway. But now he's getting into the intervention phase of biomedicals. And in particular, the things he quotes are misconstrued or construed as, I don't want to put words in his mouth, construed as pharmacological drugs. And we talk about the effect of a lot of these pharmacological drugs all the time. I mean, and again, we're not even scratching the surface of some of the other stuff right here. The guy's real smart.
Microbes are bugs, toxins, devices, and data. And it's those latter two, devices and data, that are really becoming ever more prominent as a consideration and a concern with regard to international oversight and perhaps regulation of what weaponology should and perhaps could be, and how neuroscience and neurotechnologies are then leverageable and employable as weapons on a variety of different fronts, not only being used kinetically, but increasingly being used as kinetic instruments to effect disruptive effects rather than destructive effects per se.
Now, that's where it gets totally convoluted. Disruptive effects, not destructive effects. And that's why I think this next piece that we're going to play of him is really important, because with it, he's really looking at both sides of humanity, and he at least makes the statement and acknowledges that what may seem righteous to, one group of human beings is totally destructive to another group of human beings. And he's kind of talking about the light and the darkness. He's opening up this, I forget what conference it is, but, it's with a lot of his colleagues. It's the DC Art Science Evening Rendezvous. They call it DASER. Okay, we often talk about DARPA. It's part of the National Academy of Sciences. So, again, let's see. I just wanted to bring it where he starts talking. Let's do it right here.
Colleagues tonight and talk about what we do as humans in the face of disasters we encounter and perhaps the disasters that we initiate. I can't get this to move. There we go. Behold the Demiurge. Mythical creature from Neo-Pythagorean Gnostic philosophy, the creator of all in the universe. But as we create, it's not just a question of creating those things that are bright, illuminatory, and wonderful, that give us light, warmth, and knowledge. The same power of creation holds with it the possibility for dystopia. The Demiurge was worshipped, adored, and feared, because in the power of creation also lies the power of destruction. Creating the universe means not only creating the light, it means equally creating the darkness, the cold, and the fearful. In many ways, the Demiurge embodies all that we as humans throughout our anthropological history have feared. In many ways, that same fear has brought us together. It's allowed us to look upon ourselves when we were first able to stand upright and recognize with some sort of self-sentience that indeed we had biological capabilities.
Let's just stop it right there. So, my takeaway from the first 90 seconds or so of this is, number one, he is acknowledging technology as both good and bad, light and dark. That's good. But in that, he is also essentially saying, that we have evolved in many ways. Now, I am not against micro evolution, but that's the evolution or mutation or adaptation of a species, okay, one way or the other because of their natural surroundings over time. Pass that on genetically. This idea of the Big Bang or us, coming out of the ocean at some point, I just don't buy it. I have not seen the evidence for species to species evolution. That being said, and I often say this, I barely know what's happened in the last 45 years that I've been on the planet, soon to be 46 in a couple months, folks, is we're almost there in about 2 months. Wow, time flies. That road to 50 is real. I realize, he starts talking about how we were prey at some point. And I mean, to some extent, depending on the environment, you bet your ass we're still prey. You don't want to be, and that's human to human as well. But you certainly, I'm sure a lot of people have seen Naked and Afraid and all those kind of survivalist shows. Take the camera crew out of there, it's a bloodbath. So agreement there. But it kind of tells you where he's taking it. There's going to be a lot of moral gray area. And the other thing that, I think is important to me is, again, the fact that so much of this goes back to like esoteric teachings and fables, etc. Let's get back into it.
Yet at the same time, we recognize and very often fall victim to our biological limitations. Look around the room, folks. Nobody in this room, anthropologically or through your own history, was born pooping through feathers, sucking oxygen out of water, running 40 miles an hour, climbing trees, or having huge fangs to take down prey. We were prey. And as a consequence of the thing that developed beneath our cranial vault, opposing thumbs and an ever more expansive linguistic capability, we recognized that we did real well in compensating for our biological limitations by maximizing our biological strengths. And in so doing, we recognized that we also did not work well alone. We worked best in a group. We worked best when we harnessed the power of that which we had and compensated for that which we lacked by engaging with others in increasingly complex dynamical networks of our psychosocial realities. And in so doing, we also adapted to tool use.
So he does talk about adaptation there. He does talk about the other species on the planet that in many ways had predatory advantages to us. And he also, I think correctly, recognizes that there is a certain amount of quote-unquote teamwork, there is no I in team, that is good. However, when you start getting into massive societies and collectivism on those grand scales, you need checks in place. On the flip side of that, I don't know that there is any individual scientist right now, I mean, certainly in the public arena we don't see them, that is able to work completely autonomously without others and push things forward. In fact, during this speech, he's going to talk about, and this is, again, over a decade ago, this speech. He's going to talk about back in the day, from thinking of something and putting it on paper, it was sometimes a 35-year process to get that from, let's put it down, let's get it out from our thoughts, let's work, and get it into a reality. Now, we talk about the magic boxes, we talk about Wi-Fi on a grand scale. There's just so many technologies that now we just take for granted that were part of that process. He now says, again, this is over a decade ago, that process is 5 years. Let's go back. Remember, get your questions and comments in on this. At the very end of the broadcast, we're probably going to go to you guys and see what you thought of Giordano and the Demiurge.
We're not alone in our ecology. There are a number of other species that do this rather well. But I'd like to think that in many ways, we harness the power of that thing, that gray stuff that lurks beneath our hair or not, to create the great stuff that was, in fact, considered to be biosoma. And here, with a deep and honorific nod to the late George Bulgarello from New York Academy of Sciences and New York Polytechnic Institute, I offer to you the term biosoma, the dynamical interaction of human biology, our social engagement, and our use of tools, qua machines. Increasingly more sophisticated use of our industriousness, our industriality, ultimately our technology, to understand the nature and of our universe, to understand those things that go bump in our biology and in the night. And so as not only to understand them so as to assuage our fears, but to understand so that we may control. And by control and understanding, we may then indeed optimize our flourishing, our strivings for what we consider to be good. But then we must ask, how do we define the good? Who's good? What rationality? Whose justice? And how then do we engage the artifacts of both our intellect and our creativity and our...
Now, I want people to think about what he just said. I think that is very reflective. And who is good? Who makes these decisions? Once again, that's why we used to have checks and balances on a grand scale in this country. Before we were in wars all over the world, which we still are in, okay, without declaring war. Only Congress could declare war. And yet, no, these are conflicts. These are limited engagement. These are separate types of operations. So much of that has been obfuscated. And look, I think for as long as we are human beings, and hopefully that's something that we can push to be eternal, folks, not you and I living eternally here on this earth through biology, but our species flourishing here, that's always going to be a debate. You know, unless, again, we allow these trans/post-humanists to have their way. Let's continue.
Innovation in those ways that we may define to be good that may have heinous effects on those around us. Recall the Demiurge. Indeed, ladies and gentlemen, science and technology is capable of doing wonderful things. Science, as scientia, knowledge, allows us to gain insight to the natural world. It allows us to position ourselves against the human predicament of pain, suffering, disease, and our own finitude. It allows us to harness nature in many ways, access nature in others. But in our control of nature, it also allows us to engage those parts of our nature that very often can escape our own control. Look before you on the screen. The images graphically, although rather simplistically, depict the tremendous healing and helping power of science and its artifacts and technology. And through the very same coin, the very same blade, provides us purchase and leverage to define good in ways that harm others, and in so doing, offer great harm to ourselves.
So let's just stop right there, okay, for a moment. You know, obviously, the allusion to not only the Holocaust, but human experimentation on children. It's not exclusive to Germany. Our country's done that as well. You see the nuclear bomb, that's our country. And then, again, this is 11 years ago. You see what, right now, I mean, it looks pretty, comparatively to what we have with VR, kind of primitive. Not that VR has gotten that good, but now we're wireless unless you had the Apple device. The hand gestures are often controlled by the cameras, so you don't really even have to wear gloves. You do have different haptic gloves and suits that do align with that. But then you also, again, have, before we get into trying to create, I mean, we already have different types of surgeries where, you know, people get other people's eyes when they die, when they donate organs. We have xenotransplantation right now on a level that's not working, but that's usually with kidneys. They're trying to grow these organs not only via animals, but in space, 3D printing biomaterial, not knowing how far they are. This is more of a cyber eye. And, you know, this speech is from like that 2011 arena. I covered that in Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined, the cyber eye, and, you know, kind of like a predator type eye, which again is a crazy technological achievement. But what he's really talking about is that idea of the hammer. Again, we talk about it all the time. Hammer helped build you a house, you can bash your head in. Okay? So let's go back to it.
In so many ways, what we see is that science and technology cannot be extricated from the fact that these are human endeavors. And as human endeavors employed within the human condition lie vulnerable to all of those frailties of human nature: hubris, pride, aggression, violence, fear. Oh yes, look around the room. The very same things that we may say are many of our biological and psychosocial attributes can also be leveraged in a variety of ways through the same set of knowledge and tools to be great burdens, risks, and harms. It's that heuristics, it's that striving for new knowledge, the tools of that knowledge, implemented as instruments and artifacts to develop ever more sophisticated tools that then allow us to probe ever deeper into the knowledge of the world, the universe, ourselves, that creates the power of what is sometimes referred to as Gigerenzer heuristics, so-called after Gerd Gigerenzer, my colleague in Germany, who recognized that human history has been punctuated by the interaction of strivings for knowledge, and from that knowledge the creation of instruments, artifacts, tools, techniques, and technologies that employ said knowledge not only in understanding, but in control. To leverage the human condition in ways that we define to be flourishing. We must also appreciate the limits of both knowledge and our understanding of the tools that we create ourselves as tools creators.
So let's just stop it there. I'm also in agreement here. First of all, I want to know the secrets of the universe. My entire journey in this realm, on this plane, in this reality, it is one of the pursuit of truth. Now, I also want to reiterate what he says of the limitations of human beings to know certain things. I think that is inherent with the experience, that you cannot know everything, right? Just like I don't think you can biologically live forever. I don't think you can know everything. If you could do those things, and that's real, I don't even know how real that could be. You have now hit a God-like, a deity-like status, and we are not that. And you look at the people that were key in certain realms of cybernetics, certainly artificial intelligence. So many of them wanted to find out how the brain worked, especially in the realm of consciousness. As far as I know, it's still out there. No one has been able to figure it out. But they figured out these facsimiles, all right? And that's what the next push is. Let's, and here we go. Conditions at the frontiers and boundaries. Let's let Giordano continue.
Indeed, if we look at the 20th century, we can see that this, in many ways, is the apex and at the same time the nadir of scientific and technological progression and development. Today, in this very room, in this very building, as the recipiency of advances in funding in science, technology, innovation, engineering, to engage those artifacts towards the human condition, to lessen the human predicament, and recognize what we are not, what we have and what we lack. Indeed, we're pushing the envelope of our capability ever farther and ever more severely. We must recognize, however, that those conditions at the boundaries represent that the status quo is progress. The conditions at the boundaries are always going to be unstable because they are the balancing act of what is known and what is unknown, and what may in fact be unknowable, both about which we will discover and what we will control, and perhaps ultimately about ourselves when we encounter such things. Whether it's an individual running into the room, one of our own gone mad, natural disasters, or a good firm look at ourselves and ask why not, how, and what we do with that.
Again, the guy's very articulate, very powerful when he speaks, and there's a lot in there that I agree with.
Indeed, as we press the boundaries further, we encounter not only the runaway effects, the science and technologies that we may create and let loose, but also what are referred to as Wechselblatt effects, the unanticipated consequences of our interaction with, control, disruption, and manipulation of nature, both that which exists beyond and that which exists within. Indeed, what we find is contemporary science and technology has pushed forward not only the envelope, but the pendulum of its own momentum. The translational milieu and that translational temporality that goes from concept to actualizable construct in all of the context of the human condition has been compressed over the past 100 years, from 35 years to 5 years.
And you notice he talks a little slower there. And I hope that the gravity of that statement, again, this is a decade plus ago, is impactful on people. I also hope that there are certain things that simply cannot be achieved, that are simply not knowable. Whether they could be completely and totally destructive in some kind of a dystopia. I just don't believe that a utopia can exist. So, unfortunately, the nature of humanity is to weaponize so much of this stuff. That's this guy's job. And at least he's acknowledging that, but he's also giving you an insight onto the bell curve, if you will, of what's possible now once it's simply thought of.
From idea pad to drawing board to reality. 5 years. In part because of the convergence and de-siloing of many fields of the physical and natural sciences. Physics, genoscience, nanoscience, environmental science, as we heard tonight, and evermore what we see as the final frontier, looking inside and saying, what is it? Not in a Cartesian way, I think, therefore I am, but what am I, and what makes me think, and what are others? And can we, in fact, as creators and perhaps destroyers, affect those things that think, and make new things that think? And what will we do?
I just want to mention, obviously you're reading it right here, but Homo Biotechnicus, physics, genoscience, a lot of eugenics right there, nanoscience, environmental science, which unfortunately is, the majority of which has been in transmutation, genetic modification, and now utilizing what they'll call environmental science to suppress humanity and control humanity and act as if humanity is bad. And we already covered neuroscience ad nauseum kind of at the beginning of this video.
With that, this positions us squarely as we move into the 21st century, not just as Homo sapiens, but as Homo sapiens biotechnicus. Indeed, it is we who determine and affect our nature and appreciate, engage, acknowledge, and control nature. But can we really appreciate, apprehend, and acknowledge not only our nature, but nature and what that will do to our nature? How then, given this intersection of the knowns, unknowns, certainties, and uncertainties of what we are, of what we know, what we may create, can we go forward? I pose to you in the spirit of both potential disaster and resilience, a tentative or putative way forward, a trajectory that may be harnessable. In so doing, I say let's go back to the future. Let's re-examine the term technology in its most explicit means. Techne logos, a rational accounting of tools, tool use, and nonetheless, those who develop, engage, and use such tools, ourselves.
And again, those tools were there to empower humanity. And the trajectory that we're currently on, you have to ask yourself whether or not these tools, if you will, that are being developed right now are in large part not there to suppress, command, control, maybe even replace humanity. Now, I've often talked about it. I think on one level, there are the transhumanists that want to convince the rest of us that we can merge with this technology and upload our consciousness. But at the core, they'd like to biologically live forever and perhaps utilize the technology, this bio-nanotechnology, on the general populace to perfect it in that pursuit. And I think that it is a fruitless pursuit. I think it is, unfortunately, the pursuit of evil that could lead to our supplantation on this planet as a species. You know, everybody, replacement migration, I'm worried about our species being replaced.
What shall we make? What shall we be? Perhaps then the way forward, the way down the proverbial rabbit hole, was the same as prescribed by Lewis Carroll to his dear Alice. We must look into and through the looking glass. And that looking glass is both, at the same time, concomitantly, a lens to look at the objective realities of nature, the world, biological beings, and then turn it around to become a mirror, to look upon ourselves and all of our biological, psychosocial, cultural, hubris and humility strengths, limitations, weaknesses, and flaws. What that mirror prompts us to do is to not act blindly with our heads down to those things we may create as artifacts, instruments, and tools in our understanding, our creation, and manipulation of ourselves and the world around us. Not to act, as Hannah Arendt said, as in what is considered to be anima laborans, slaving away in an animalistic way that does not take reason, that does not take reference of what it creates and what it becomes, but instead to act as homo faber, to act instead perhaps as homo biotechnologicus, to take a rational accounting and recognize ourselves as homo sapiens and the power that such sapience provides.
There's a lot I agree there. You know, we talked about the mirror. That's really the brilliance of the term Black Mirror, and that series that's been going strong, man, close to, it's got to be 15 years. You know, it was first, in Europe on the BBC. I haven't watched a lot of them, but the ones that I have seen are extremely powerful. And if you watched that recent panel with myself, Corbett, Webb, T-Lav, Steve, Kit Knightley, go down the list, great panel. I often talk about how the AI, that technology, is a reflection of what you will accept as your narrative. As it's trying to play into the accepted narrative to push to you, but push it to you in a way where you don't contradict it or challenge it. All right? And look, this guy is saying we need to remain, and I agree with this, whether or not that perspective is really different behind closed doors. We need to remain human and utilize this stuff as tools with a rational accounting. And a rational accounting is we don't need to replace us.
Indeed, I offer you as a potential rescue boat towards the future of this bouncing ocean of uncertainty upon which we find ourselves. And that perhaps the only way to, in fact, even approach what is proverbially referred to as Neurath's boat, to be able to remend, reconstruct, reconfigure, and save the very ship that we have built ourselves in as we sail ever further onto this ocean of uncertainty and control, is to reclaim the power of our own sapience. Not only as a lens to buy ourselves objectively, but as a mirror to look upon ourselves subjectively, not fall victim to the folly of Icarus hubris, false pride, not only in what we create and what we control, but in our ability to manipulate, understand, and have insight and judgment to what we may make, what we may make of ourselves. It demands going forward in a balanced, reflective, and responsible way. Issues such as the brand new Brain Research through Advancing Innovative Neurotechnologies initiative that is launched by President Obama just in spring of this year are certainly innovative and will in fact address and confront the final frontier of the brain mind and what it means to be human and perhaps other species that are sentient, poignant, and sapient.
That, again, very unsure about. That's a question. A lot of these guys are behind closed doors in black projects, but I think that's the big trick. Just like the idea you can live forever, or that you can be sentient in all of the knowledge, not sentient in yourself and understand, but literally in everything, in the ether, if you will. I just don't buy it. And believe me, I think there are great technological leaps out there outside of what's in the public arena. The key to consciousness, not so sure about it.
The question is, what will we do with that which we know and that which we can create? What will we do about that which we can't? And it's that sense of responsibility and self-awareness and reflexivity that I hold as the viable tool that is not magical, but that is in fact real, that we have possessed and possess evermore. And in fact, as we look into the looking glass, that looking glass allows us to then appear back upon ourselves, and perhaps our most salient and perhaps our most significant strength is that sapience of self, to guide and govern the demiurge that is not bioscience, but is bioscience and biotechnology as human endeavor in human endeavor, and was created by us, humanity, the demiurge. So what I offer you in conclusion, and in preparation for those experts, my colleagues who you'll hear momentarily, is this. We are both demiurge and Atlas. The future is in our hands and upon our shoulders. Let's not drop it.
Let's not drop it. So again, this guy's Georgetown professor. He is part of the Defense Department. Very smart guy. Brings it back to that arena again of esotericism, but very much about humanity and our place in that, and acknowledging. And by the way, I'm of this acknowledgement. I don't believe that aliens have given us secret technology. I think what you see is what you get, and it's this species right here that's responsible for it. Now, as I promised, we're going to take your questions and comments right now. If you are watching live over on the YouTubans, I do want to get you to do the thumbs up. If you're new, don't just subscribe. Ring that bell. Check out some of the old stuff. Check out all the documentary films. And if you enjoyed what you watched, $5, $10, $15, folks, it means the world to me. Big donors need you now more than ever. There are links down below, where you can also donate. And remember, again, guys, I can't do it without you. All right, let's see what we got here. No 30-minute notice. Katie, you are one of my most adamant watchers, and I would just say it's very hard. Like, I was looking at numbers from just 2-3 years ago, and even from 2-3 years ago, like 2020 to 2022, most of my videos got 2,000-3,000. I'm lucky. A lot of my videos right now don't even get 1,000 views on YouTube. Now, and Rumble's a little bit better, but not much. We still got the rock fin going out. X is pathetic. In fact, we're not even streaming live right now on X because there's some problem with the studio over there. I don't know if there's some hack attack over on X, but not a great product that I'm paying almost $100 for that has a multi-tiered system where I basically get peed on. Hey, Melanie, how we doing? Hey now, those are the guys. Scott, it's good to see everybody. Ryan, good to see you as well. Let's see, do we got anybody? Let's see, transhumanism is just eugenics 2.0. It's really just a rebranding. We often talk about that. I think that has to be an acknowledgement as well. Let's see, he might be smart, but he's nuts. Let's see, that guy, he's a criminal. Giordano's a smart guy, man. He is a smart guy, and you got to love it. In fact, you notice how it says Jace right there? We're going to fix that right now. It's my technology today, everybody. Oh, it didn't get fixed. That's lovely. That is just lovely. Let's just do that. Doom, and then boom, and that fix it. I think it did. Oh, we're on the wrong one. I'm sitting here talking, not even realizing what I'm doing. We'll fix it right now, hopefully. Right, that fix it. There it is. Boom. Now you can actually see my name. Sorry. After this, I got a ton of actual house cleaning. I got to reformat my whole computer. Yeah, like everything's acting sluggish. So that means that I got to take about 1 gigabyte of data, throw it on a hard drive. I got to reformat the drive, put Windows 11 back on it. It's all the fun stuff I really, really don't want to do at all. Not even a little bit. But we're going to do it. We're going to do it right after this broadcast. Let's get those thumbs up. We can almost have one thumb up for every person. We didn't break 100, which is, we didn't break 100 live streamers here on YouTube. It's only, a little more than 1 in 1,000 plus subscribers. I bet this guy has a hell of a bash on the 4th of July. A lot of flag waving and a barbecue right before they sing the national anthem and read the Bill of Rights. Listen, you may say that he's creepy, blah, blah. He's a really smart guy. And he does seem like a bit of a bro. Got some shoulders on him. I don't mind people that are intelligent. Is he extremely frightening? Yes. Just want to say that. Let's see. He's been on shroom channels trying to be cool. Who's on shroom channels? Are you talking about Giordano? Maybe. I'm going to be watching a lot more of his stuff. I've watched some of the other lectures. That was a short one. Like, a lot of his lectures are like an hour long. Maybe we'll do a watch along with one of those. But that video was only like 15 minutes long. A lot of the tech cats, microdose. I find it hard to believe he's ever done a heroic dose, if any at all. Who cares about his shrooms? Or personally, that doesn't, one way or the other. I don't think I was a fish either. Biological evolution, okay. Manipulated cyborg future, no bueno. Mr. Deadbot, I am learning so much. Well, thanks for coming here for a little learnage. Let's see. It is funny how the further they run from genuine spirituality, the more they try to technologically recreate God. We do see that a ton. Folks, that is going to wrap it up. I want to thank everybody that did watch me live. I want to thank all the supporters out there one more time. The links are down below. I cannot do it without you. I want to remind you, I am a documentary filmmaker. You want to learn about 9/11? Fabled Enemies, Loose Change Final Cut. They're free right now. They're in the playlist section down below. I think they not only hold up, but are as important, if not more important right now than ever. Okay? They really, really let you know about the amount of corruption, not just in this country, okay, but globally. And if you want to go further down that rabbit hole of globalism, we got 2 more movies for you. Shade the Motion Picture and Invisible Empire, A New World Order Defined. We try to demystify that term, show its historical nature. And yes, there are varying degrees of its use, but in essence, we are talking about a command control system, the regimentation of all human beings under quote-unquote global governance based in this type of fascistic order that we've seen develop before our eyes for decades and really take a stronghold during the COVID-19 84 nightmare. Remember, it is not about left or right to this guy. It is always about right and wrong. I absolutely love you guys. We'll see you all on the flip side.